Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, Chris Olave trade rumors. Does it make sense for the Silver and Black to go out and try to get the Saints wide receiver? And then at the very end of today's show, Kirk Cousins news impacts the Las Vegas Raiders. And if you don't think that it does, personally, I think you live underneath a rock. I always want people to subscribe to the Raiders Report for the latest NFL news, especially this time in the offseason, because all NFL news this time in the offseason is going to impact the Raiders in one way or not. But then also, I always see people talking about craziness over the weekend. And over the weekend, probably the number one thing that I continuously got notifications about was the Raiders. There was a rumor that linked them to Chris Olave and whether or not it made sense for John Spytek and Pete Carroll to go out and try to get him. So the rumor is very much a rumor. I'm going to be transparent. It's not from a credible source. But just because it's not from a credible source doesn't mean that a lot of people are talking about it. Because a lot of people are talking about right now Chris Olave potentially getting traded to the Raiders. Again, nobody from the Raiders organization is talking about it, but social media is talking about it. So the fact that Olave has been linked to the Silver and Black then also brings up the idea of, well, I've heard Amari Cooper being linked to the Raiders. I've heard Keenan Allen being linked to the Raiders. Me personally, I think wide receivers are being linked to the Silver and Black because people don't understand what the Raiders did this offseason with Jack Besh, Dante Thornton, Tommy Millott. And I think our wide receiver room is already pretty set in stone. But then also, anytime a player brings up, hey, at one point, I would love to go play for that team. And if you don't remember, back during the draft process, Olave in 2022 said that he would love to play for the Raiders because his older brother is a fan. Now, I think anytime Chris Olave trade rumors get brought up, the Raiders are a team that gets linked. Now, when you look at his numbers from a career standpoint, he was really good his first 2 years in the league coming out of Ohio State in 2022 and in 2023. Year 3 is typically known as the breakout year for a receiver. And when you're putting up numbers like the numbers that Olave has up on screen, you are anticipating that this is going to be one of the better young wide receivers in the National Football League because you're hoping that he's going to be able to get better and better and better. So after looking at the numbers that you see up on screen, I'm going to hit y'all with a question, and this will be the number one question, the pinned comment on today's show. I want you to type trade or pass. Will the Raiders trade for Chris Olave? My answer coming up right here after this YouTube ad break. I'm going to pass this one. Not that I don't like the player that Olave is. And if you want to see a trade that I put out on social media, at Mitchell Renz 365, I was kind of going back and forth with our Saints guy here from Chat Sports, Trace Gerard, of what I could potentially offer New Orleans. But I really do not think that Pete Carroll, Spytek are going to be interested in going out and getting Olave. Not saying that he's not a good player. I just don't think that this regime is going to do it. The first reason why I would say it's not going to happen, the Raiders are a lot more confident in the wide receivers in that room than I think people outside of the media actually realize. Like, people that follow the Silver and Black probably heard this Chris Olave rumor like, oh, man, here we go again with these wide receiver rumors. And I kind of agree with you because this team likes Jack Besh a lot. They like the deep field ability of Dante Thornton Jr. Also, Chip Kelly's first recruit ever, Kyle Phillips, who they added earlier this offseason. Tommy Millott's been looking really solid in the slot. Trey Tucker has been a dog at OTAs, and we're hoping that he can put it together. So this is a wide receiver room that doesn't get nearly the amount of respect from outside of this Raiders organization. So I wanted to be able to reiterate yet again that the Raiders are confident in their receivers, and I think the only way that an Olave trade were to happen is if after OTAs, after minicamp, and then we're sitting there right before July, and we're going, wow, our wide receivers are bad. To me, though, I don't think that that's going to happen. Let's go to another reason here of why I don't think the trade ends up going down. It's the trade cost. And I will break down the dollars and cents side of it, but if the reports are true that New Orleans is looking for a day 2 pick, so that's either round 2 or round 3, I don't see how on earth the Raiders go, we gave up a 3rd-round pick for our quarterback, so now let's give up a round 2 pick or a round 3 pick for a wide receiver. And again, Olave is a good receiver. I'm not trying to get that twisted, but if the Raiders go out and they trade for Olave, not only do they have to give up, let's say, a day 2 pick, let's say it's round 3, you're going to have to pay him this season. Not a lot of money. $3.3 million is what it's going to count against the cap for the Silver and Black. Just way the the contract gets broken down for Olave. And because New Orleans already exercised that fifth-year option with him, you're already on hook for the $15.5 million. So, essentially, it's not that much money for 2 years of a good receiver if he's able to stay healthy. But then I'd also go, well, if you're going to go out and make that deal for Olave, there's a part of me that I would say save the draft capital and that money that you would use to invest in Olave, because in my mind, if you're trading for him, that tells me that you're not only looking for that 2 years, you're looking at beyond that. I also would want the Raiders to go out and get a deal done with Jacoby Myers. I think that honestly might rub Myers the wrong way. But the biggest reason, the number one reason why I really don't think that the trade ends up going down, it's the health concerns around Olave. And if we're going to be an offense that's predicated on being a physical FU brand style of football, we need our wide receivers to also buy into that. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go out and trade for a guy that has had the amount of concussions that Olave has had, especially recently, right? Remember the fall off of Hunter Renfrow? That would be my concern of what we're going to see with Olave, where there's just a little bit of fall off. And don't get me wrong, the reports from Renfrow, he looks pretty damn good, and I'm happy for him in Carolina. But he suffered 2 concussions last season, played in only 8 games, Olave. Olave has had a concussion in each of his first 3 seasons. 4 noted concussions in the NFL, and he also suffered a noted concussion at Ohio State in 2020. So this is 5 known concussions since 2020. The reason why I throw out the word known is because I guarantee you, anybody that's ever played football or anybody that knows somebody that has played football, the difference between known concussions and just concussions in general, the fact that we know about 5 tells me that there's so much more. Because any of my buddies that have played football, any of the players that I've talked to that either are in the NFL or at college, when I talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, I suffered way more concussions that were actually ever reported. So the fact that we know that these injuries are already starting to rattle up for Olave, on top of the fact that we're trying to play this tough you mother effer style of football, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for the silver and black. I also just don't think it makes a lot of sense for Chris Olave. Now, if you told me you could turn injuries off like we're doing Madden style, I think Olave would be a phenomenal fit with Geno Smith and this offense. Coming up next here on the show, let's get into the Kirk Cousins news that could potentially impact the silver and black this upcoming season. And again, I know this is the Raiders report. I know we talked about Olave, and I know we're about to talk about Cousins. It's also the offseason, and I want to do my best here to keep up to date on all things going on around the NFL, not just the Raiders in the offseason. Before we get into the Cousins rumors, if you're looking for Raiders gear, whether that be a hat, a sweatshirt, t-shirt, shorts, if your significant other needs some Raiders gear, like a purse or, I don't know, I saw a crop top the other day that, I'm going to be honest, I think Alex would look really freaking good in it. If you're trying to get some clothes, whatever it might be, we got Raiders gear on sale at chatsports.com/Raider sale. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description. I also bring this up because Father's Day is right around the corner, and for me personally, I really don't buy a lot of things. I really don't. I got my wedding coming up here very soon, which, crazy enough, at the time that I'm recording this, 10 days away and I get married. But I don't buy a lot of things for myself. The only things that I really buy myself, honestly, are probably Raider stuff at this point. So if you see something that's on sale that you like, hey, put it in your bag, get it for yourself, give a little Father's Day gift to yourself. Chatsports.com/Raider sale. So let's go to the news here around Kirk Cousins if you didn't see what it was. And there was a report that came out on May 27th that Raheem Morris says he has not seen quarterback Kirk Cousins yet today, as the Falcons are set to begin their first OTA practice in a little bit. Then Tom Pelissero chimed in on that tweet and said, the first practice of Falcons OTAs is now underway, and Kirk Cousins is not on the field. Cousins has made clear he wants to play elsewhere in 2025. So, yes, I know that the Raiders are not going to get Cousins, and that's not what I'm trying to do here with this show. Geno Smith is light years of a better quarterback than Cousins. I have no interest in Kirk Cousins, and I'm not saying that the Kirk Cousins news impacts the Raiders because the Raiders could go out and get him. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying because Cousins right now is on the Atlanta Falcons and he's on or in the NFC, that impacts the Raiders because the Raiders, for one, don't play Atlanta this season. He's also in the NFC, which means to me You can say what you want about Cousins. I think he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. And because I think he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL, if he goes elsewhere, he's going to make a team that needs a QB better. So because we don't play the Falcons, because Atlanta's in the NFC, and because the Falcons don't play anybody from the AFC West, Kirk Cousins, if he stays with Atlanta, doesn't really have an impact on us. The fact that he wants to leave and the fact that I think he wants to leave, he might leave, and the teams that would try to go out and get him, that's where I think that the Raiders could be impacted here. So let's talk about the trade suitors. And I'll be real, Cousins has a no-trade clause. I think any team that if they were to offer, Atlanta literally anything, Atlanta's going to do it because they're going to want to get out of this situation. But I would say these are the teams that make the most sense for Cousins. First off, we talk about New Orleans and intertrades, interdivision trades don't really happen often. But maybe Atlanta thinks that they're just going to screw New Orleans by just giving them that contract. But Tyler Shuck or Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback. J.J. McCarthy with Minnesota. There's a lot of, rumors going on around McCarthy. But then again, why the hell would you move on from Sam Darnold, a 35-touchdown quarterback, if you weren't confident in McCarthy? To me, legitimately, the top three teams most likely to trade for Kirk Cousins, the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Indianapolis Colts. What do all those three teams have in common? And if you want to go through, you want to look at depth charts, if you want to go through and you want to look at which teams need a potential quarterback, please go ahead and do it. I did it. I tried to go through the exercise myself, and these were the top three teams that I thought just made the most sense. The Browns have Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Shedeur Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel. That's a bad quarterback room. I think Cousins is the best quarterback on that roster. Again, Deshaun Watson, he's unhealthy. He's not going to play this season. Pittsburgh Steelers, they've been rumored to go get Aaron Rodgers. I still think that Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh. But if Rodgers doesn't go to the Steelers, then if I'm Mike Tomlin, if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm going, well, Kirk Cousins, are you available? Maybe that's a realm. And then the Indianapolis Colts, they have Anthony Richardson, and they have Daniel Jones. Kirk Cousins is better than both of those guys in my book. So if you think about the trade, okay, and I do think that if this trade ends up going down, it's going to happen after June 1st. It's not going to happen before just because, again, the way that the contract works out, and you're going to hear more and more, I think, Cousins trade rumors piling up leading up to that June 1st deadline, because if a trade happens, Atlanta saves $27.5 million and they eat only $12.5. The new team that would acquire Cousins pays him $27.5 million in 2025. So again, you're not acquiring Cousins to be a backup. He wants to be a starter. So you're acquiring him to be a starter. There's not many teams that want Cousins, especially the way that he ended that year as a starter at $27.5 million. Also, if you trade for him, you're taking on his contract in 2026 and 2027. You can get out of it easily, but $57.5 million cap hit for Kirk Cousins, I think, just goes to show how good that deal is for Geno Smith. So I want you all to look into your crystal balls here and predict which team goes out and gets Cousins. Or do you think he's just going to stay at Atlanta? Is he going to be the backup to Michael Penix Jr.? Let me know down below, what team will Kirk Cousins be on this upcoming season? There's a part of me that goes, he's going to stay with Atlanta, because I just can't imagine a team being interested in going out and getting him. But then again, if a trade does end up going down, I think the AFC is going to get stronger. And the fact that the AFC could get stronger, that's worrisome to me, because I don't look at a team like the Browns as being a playoff caliber team. I don't look at the Pittsburgh Steelers right now with their quarterback situation. I get it. Pittsburgh's got a great defense, but I think Pittsburgh is in the exact same situation the Raiders were in last year, where, yeah, you had a great defense, but if your quarterback sucks, if your quarterback's Mason Rudolph, you're not making the playoffs. I'm sorry, even if you've had Mike Tomlin for 17 years and he's never had to lose, you're not making the playoffs. Indianapolis Colts, I also don't view them as a playoff caliber team. Cousins, though, you put him with the Browns, you put him with the Steelers, you put him with Indy, there's at least a chance that it could happen. But then also, if Cousins does go to one of those teams, the Raiders' schedule gets tougher, because Cousins on the Browns is a better football team than the Browns currently are right now. Cousins on the Indianapolis Colts, I also think, are a better football team than what they are right now. So to me, that's why I think the Kirk Cousins news impacts the Raiders, because I believe that Cousins ends up going to either the Browns or the Indianapolis Colts, which makes the Raiders' schedule tougher because for the Silver and Black, they end up playing the Indianapolis Colts in Week 5, and then you got the Cleveland Browns in Week 12. Both of those games, when I look at them right now on this schedule, I expect the Raiders to win. I expect the Raiders to beat Indy, and I expect the Raiders to beat Cleveland. It's not too often can you look at a Raiders schedule and have a game circled and go, I expect them to win that game. And, maybe that's even unfair for me to say that based off of how bad the Raiders have been in years past. But then it's also because I don't have a lot of faith in Indy. I don't have a lot of faith right now in Cleveland. But Cousins going to those teams, I'm sorry, it makes them better, which then makes it a little bit more of a question mark of whether or not the Silver and Black are going to be able to get a dubs. Those are 2 weeks that we really need to make sure that we're getting a win, especially that Week 12 game. Because you look at the Raiders' schedule from Week 13 all the way to Week 18, a lot of tough football games in there. Appreciate, again, everybody who tuned in to the Raiders Report. If you do not know, I am going to be live this upcoming Friday during a Madden stream. We'll also be live on Thursday, but we are going to be giving away an Ashton Genty jersey this Friday. $5 super chat or a $5 super thanks in order for your shot to win it. Good luck to everybody, and appreciate for everyone tuning in to the Raiders Report.